In this video, I'm going to break down how to build a winning culture, one of my favorite topics in business, because if you can learn to be a great leader and build a great culture, not only do you run an amazing business, but you're also able to actually have an amazing family. So these principles of being a leader are the best principles and the best skill set that you can have as a CEO, business owner, entrepreneur. So let's dive into it. The first thing is there is 3 steps. Step number 1 is standards. Step number 2 is repetition. Step number 3 is service. Now, we're going to start with standards. The most important thing with step 1 is going to be that you have to set a clear standard for what your culture is and what winning and losing looks like in your culture. Most owners, if you ask them, what is your standard? They can't even tell you themselves. And so the first thing is we have to set the clear guidelines and standards that you have to also live by. So what does that look like? The first thing is you need to be clear about your standard level. So we call them SLAs. They're standard level agreements inside of your company. So this can be core values, it can be code of honor, it can be non-negotiables, it can be standards or behaviors, right? The next thing is your team needs to know what winning looks like, what losing looks like, and why the standard exists. So again, I'm going to break this down and what that looks like in our company. So 95% of companies have core values. They're usually very basic. They usually just have the words of responsibility, reliability, commitment, communication, greatness. If you actually zoom into our core values, what you'll notice is there is actually a bottom explanation for that core value. So responsibility, we do what we say we will do, and we take full responsibility for all of our actions. So that allows us to understand what responsibility looks like. And so when somebody doesn't have responsibility and they don't take responsibility for their actions, we go back to our core values, right? Reliability, we are always on time. We are trustworthy and reliable in everything we do. Now, what does on time mean? Now, to some people, on time means if I need to show up at 9 o'clock, I show up at 9 o'clock. To us, if you show up at 9 o'clock, you are actually late because it's probably 9 o'clock in 1 second or 2 seconds. That is not on time. And so we also teach our people that on time means that you are actually early to what it is. So 8:59 or before is actually being on time for us. So again, you can put these things on paper, but you have to reiterate things over and over and over. And I won't get ahead of ourselves. That's repetition part of it, but we're going to break this down. So if you have a core values, great. You have what 95% of business owners do. Do you have an explanation of what it looks like, and have you communicate that with your team? Now, here's the part that most people miss. So this is what's called the learning pyramid. Now, if you lecture somebody, so just like I'm doing here right now, I'm lecturing you on what to do, right? If I had no visuals and I was just talking at you, or maybe I gave you a PDF document for you to read, you were only retaining 5% of what I'm saying, and you also are only retaining 10% of what you're reading. So we want to make sure that we try to get down to the bottom of this pyramid, which realistically teaching others is how you know what you know, because you have to articulate it. You have to explain it. If you don't know something, you're not going to be able to explain it. Einstein says somebody who can explain something simply doesn't understand it. So that's the first thing. So the goal is for us to be able to create a system for us to get down this pyramid to set the foundation, which is the bottom of the pyramid. So how do we do that? Well, in my company, I don't just set a standard. I also define what winning and losing looks like. So how do we do that? Well, we create frameworks. So here's an actual roadmap of what we do in our process. So if you're a salesperson, you have your whole entire map of what it looks like and what the SOPs are. If you were to click on this document, it would take you to training videos, it would take you to SOPs, it would take you to SLAs. And so if somebody onboards on day 1 with me, they go to this document and they can actually visualize the process. Okay, I start here. Okay, I input this way. Okay, then when I'm done with that, I go here. Okay, when I send an email, I send it this way. And so there's a very clear process for them to visually see what the flow is. Why is that so important? Number 1, it's clear. It makes them understand what the process is. Number 2, and more importantly, if they mess up this process, we don't have to guess or ask them, hey, what got messed up here? We can go exactly to the part of the process and said, you didn't put the subject email the right way. Well, that's right here. So here's how you can fix that next time. It's like, oh, got it. Okay, I understand that, right? And so the goal is to have a system where you can locate what is going right and what is going wrong. But a lot of people don't have this clarity in their business. And then what they do is they hire people expecting those people just to perform with no clarity whatsoever. That is only inviting C and B players into your company. An A player will look at this and be like, look, I want to be able to win, but you're not giving me the systems to win. I explain it this way. You are not going to be able to have people be great in a sport if the sport is always changing its rules. So, for example, in basketball, let's say that randomly the ref decides that a three-pointer is now a one-pointer. And then the next play, he decides it's a five-pointer, right? What would happen is when somebody hits a three, the ref would be like, that's a one-pointer. They would get frustrated because like, you keep changing the rules on me. So you want to have an A player like LeBron James, a Michael Jordan, a Magic Johnson, all these different people. You want to have those people playing the sport because why? The sport is rigged not to be able to perform. And so high performers don't want to play this game that is not clear and doesn't give them a chance to actually perform. So your job is to make sure you set the guidelines of what winning and losing looks like, and then let A players below winning out of the park and do things that are incredible. If you think about the guy that invented basketball, he wasn't the best basketball player. So the person who invents it is inventing it for the reason for people who are more talented and more athletic and just better to come in and make the sport. Did he probably ever imagine that people would windmill dunk on people when he was making a little basket with a little cutout thing? Probably not. Why? Because he probably couldn't even dunk it. And so that is the part of being a business owner, is if you can actually establish this the right way and do the whole entire framework, then the whole entire process becomes very, very clear. So that's the first thing. Now, the next thing is during this whole entire workflow, the thing that you'll notice is when you go through this process, we will have pictures of SOPs. So the SOPs are going to be, again, back to the pyramid framework that I talked about. Well, you want to make sure that you're getting lower in the pyramid. So all this stuff is lecture, reading, audio, and visual. Great, right? That's all you can do from the very beginning for the onboarding process, right? Those are all great to have. So SOPs, again, reading, 10% of retention. But then there is, going to be audio and visual. That's about 15%. So you want to make training videos and how you actually do it and have them be onboarded to watch, okay, this is how I do it. This is the level of the standard. This is how they do it. And I'm going to follow along. Now, the next thing, which is the most important part, is now they have to get into demonstration. You want to get them there as quickly as possible. Going back to the pyramid, see what I'm doing? I'm going from lecture to reading to audio and visual to then demonstration, which is the videos too, showing them how to do it, and then discussions about, is it clear? Yep, cool. Let's practice doing it now. When they practice doing it, they're now able to retain it at 75%. Most companies will just stick up here and then they'll just skip all of these parts and throw you into this tier, expecting you to retain 75% of it, but you're only retaining 15 to 35% of it, and then you're coming down here not willing and not able to actually perform the way you should. So that's why the order needs to be in the right order. And a lot of people have SOPs, but they don't have training videos. They don't have demonstration. They don't have a good trainer discuss, hey, is everything clear to you? Can we actually get to the next step, right? So again, you want to take them through, it's like gamifying the process. Take them through the step-by-step in the whole entire process. Now, the next thing is, after you get through this whole process, you get through SOPs, you get through training videos, this all lives in one folder for your new employees, your new hires. And now you're able to hire quickly, you're able to scale quickly, and you're able to actually get them to onboard way faster. Most people I coach, their onboarding process is like 2-3 months. And then all of a sudden they realize after the 2-3 months they've wasted, the people aren't the right people. My goal is to get them onboarded within a couple of weeks, and then we expose if they actually are good. Now, the next thing I'm going to look at is the actual analogy. So I talk about basketball a lot, but this is the reason why it's so important to set the clear guidelines through what I just talked about. Now, in basketball, you have out-of-bounds lines. Now, what happens is you have a referee as well. And so if you're somebody who catches the ball and your foot is out of bounds right here, and the ref says out of bounds and blows the whistle, you look down and you realize your foot is out of bounds, you're not going to complain to the ref. You're going to give the ball back to him, and you're probably going to be mad at yourself because you're like, hey, the standard of the out-of-bounds line was extremely clear. It is a big white line. There's no way that I could have missed it. you're not going to get mad at the ref. That is the rules of the game, right? But what you would do is you would get mad if we were playing street ball and we removed all of these lines. Now you don't know where the lines are. Maybe it's the trash can. Maybe it's the tree. Maybe it's just an invisible line. And so what starts to happen is you have a lot more arguments between where is the line and where is not the line. And so your business is built around where is the actual line of winning, staying inside a line, and losing, staying outside the line. That way, when they actually lose or go outside the line, they will not be arguing with you about, it wasn't clear, I didn't know what I was doing, blah, blah, blah. It saves you so much time and also allows you to expose if they're actually a good player. So to break this down, most companies fail because expectations are emotional instead of measurable. That's exactly what I talked about with the lines. So what does bad culture look like? Unclear expectations, emotional reaction, and consistency. What does good culture look like? Clear expectations, objective standards, accountability. So what should you do next? Now that we have the whole standard, we built out the core values, we built out everything, all that stuff is pretty clear, everything is good. Well, the next part, before we get into step 2, is you want to print out your core values and you want to put them on the wall in your office. Now, if you're a virtual office, obviously you want to put it in the onboarding, you want to put it in your meetings, you want to repeat it on a daily basis. That is the most important thing, which gets into step 2. Now, culture cannot live in a Google Doc that nobody reads. That's why we say we want to print it there. Now, the part of the daily repetition, I should say, that is going to be step number 2, which is what we'll get into as repetition. So step number 2, this is one of my favorites because step number 2, this is where most people fail because they get too busy themselves as owners. They really just don't know how to be able to keep repeating it. Your job as a CEO is to remind your team of what the standard is and continue to repeat it over and over and over. So how do we do that? So first of all, culture is repetition. That's what it comes down to. Now, there's 3 parts that we use when a mistake is made. It's either systems, clarity, or effort. Now, here's the good news. We always look at systems and clarities first. So if somebody makes a mistake in the company, we look at, did they have the right system in place for them to succeed? If the answer is yes, then we look at, were we clear about our deadline or expectations? If the answer is yes, then that's when we talk to them about effort. So if we go to the employee and we say, hey, you missed this deadline. Did you have the right systems for you to perform? Yeah, I did. Okay, were we clear that this deadline was in place, that we need this done by 12 o'clock on Tuesday? Yeah. Okay, so what happened? I just forgot. It's like, okay, that's not acceptable to our company. So we're going to give you a warning because we gave you everything to succeed and you just chose, aka effort, not to do this the right way. And so we're going to look at you and you can put them on a PIP, right? You can be able to do those things, but really you want to have a conversation with them and say, hey, this is not our standard. This cannot happen again. If this happens again, standard, out of bounds line, the ball will be turned over, aka you will lose your job if this happens again. And again, it depends on what the mistake is, and you don't want to be so aggressive. You also don't want to be too passive. There's a balance to that, which I won't get too much into. But these are the cool thing is I never think it's ever effort with my employees. I always think it's the wrong system, the wrong clarity. What a lot of owners will do is they will go right to effort. I knew the systems were there. I told you it was clear. Why did you make the mistake? Then the employee gets on the defensive, and what they do is they're not able to actually be honest. They're just going to say, yeah, that's on me. I'm so sorry. I won't do it again, right? But then they go home to their wife or their husband. They say, wow, Jerry was such an a-hole. He doesn't understand me. I don't feel heard or seen. They gave me these stupid systems that I don't understand, blah, blah. That is what you want out of them. You want the information. And so what I mean by that, well, if you're able to go to them more comforting, hey, did you have the right systems in place for you to win? No, you know what? It just wasn't clear to me. I looked at the video, I thought I knew it, but I just didn't. Okay, let's dive into that more, because if we can fix the systems and the clarity for you, then that will never happen again, and then you can win. They're like, okay, great. What did I just do there? I didn't put them on the defensive. I put them in a collaboratory mindset. So now they're ready to collaborate with me. Now they're ready to fix the issue. It's we get to work on something together. I'm on your team. I'm not against you, right? That is the most important part. Now, systems. First comes systems. The system is your code of honor. Your standards is your operating system. No system equals confusion. Again, if you don't have the right system, there's no way. I don't care if they're an A player, they're going to look like a C player. You have to have the right systems. Clarity is, as the founder, you must repeat the standard over and over and over to the point where you get annoyed with how much you repeat it. Great leaders are always saying the same phrases. You will notice if you've ever coached with me, I will say systems, clarity, and effort a million times because it's a framework that works. When there's a mistake in any of my businesses or my students' businesses, I go to, was it systems, was it clarity, was it effort? And they have to answer that question. And usually they're just like, oh my gosh, I know what he's going to say. That means I am a great leader. If it's predictable of what you say as a leader, that means that the foundation is predictable and people know what the standard is. When you're not predictable, well, maybe sometimes Jared will reprimand me. Maybe sometimes he'll get mad at me. Maybe sometimes he'll be on my team. You are an unpredictable leader, which A players do not want to work for. Now, it's like a song on repeat. You may not even like the song anymore, but eventually everybody knows the lyrics. That's culture. You hear it when you hear a song on the radio, you hear a song on TikTok, you hear a song on Instagram. You find yourself singing it, and you're like, oh, I hate that song. Why is it stuck in my head? That means that you are able to instill what the core values, what the code of honor, what the standard is to the company. If your company cannot repeat what you require from them, they simply don't understand it. So people do not rise to vague expectations, they rise to repeated clarity. If your team consistently violates standards, most of the time it is not rebellion, it's lack of repetition. So I think a lot of people think, well, I told them this, I told them that. I sent them an email, didn't they read it? You miss things too. Life is busy. Life is emotional. It's almost like if I hold up all these pins and I'm like, I want you to follow this purple pin. Okay, follow it. I want you to follow this green pin. Okay, follow both of them at the same time. Now I want you to follow this. Like that's what happens when you start to scale, when there's more responsibility on employees. And also, they have personal lives. There might be some things inside of their life that is just stressful right now. Maybe they're dealing with things at home. And so it's your job to be their foundation and their rock, to bring them back to, hey, this is our standard. It doesn't matter how you feel. I'm going to be your consistency so you can actually get back on a standard that you know is acceptable. And again, it's not in a harsh way. It's in a loving way. So that is step number 2. Now we're going to get into step number 3, which is honestly my favorite part about being a leader. I think of most people do not lead this way. That's the reason why their cultures always break. They don't appeal to A players. And so it is service. Now, lead by serving, not by attacking. Most entrepreneurs are overwhelmed. They're stressed. They feel pressure constantly. So they lead like they're going to war every day. And because of that, they correct people emotionally. Now, look, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in business for a long time. I get it. People really don't understand how much weight entrepreneurs and business owners go through. You got to make payroll. You got to make sure you close those deals. You got to have money in the business. People rely on you. You're trying to balance your family life and your personal life with business, and you have these goals in business, and you have these goals in family, and you can't always do everything. And then all of a sudden, maybe you have a lawsuit, and maybe that you have a client who's pissing you off. There's so much stress, so I get it. The reality is if you embody that stress, and you come into your company being inconsistent, you cannot act like you are going to get a consistent culture. You are the culture. And so if you're not consistent, no matter what you're feeling, how you're feeling, or what is going on in the business, you cannot expect your team to actually be consistent as well. You are the leader of it. And so the way that I think about it is if you are coming in, and I hear this from the people that I coach, they say, how's everything going? And they'll say, I feel like I'm going to war. I feel like I'm going to battle. And that's right. Like that's what it does feel like, right? Now, there's a time and a place to act on those emotions. If you're in sales and you're trying to get your goals aggressively, great, go to battle, go to war. But when you're talking to somebody in the company that might be a little more emotional, and you come off as an attacking person or you're going to war, you will actually repel those employees, not pulling a lot out of them. They will actually revert, and you're wondering, like, why do they keep making more mistakes? Because you taught them to be scared around you. They can't be honest about what's actually going on, which if they can't be honest with you, then you don't have the real playbook for you to actually fix it. Therefore, you make yourself not very usable. You're not going to be helpful. And so the thing about it that I always do in the morning, no matter how stressed I am, I first understand how stressed I am. But I changed my mindset from I'm going to war to how can I serve today? How can I serve people that might not give me back anything? And why would I do that? Well, because number one, I want reality. I want a real answer from them. And so if I attack people, it looks like this. Hey, I told you to do this, and why did you do it this way? What isn't it clear? And then they get defensive, or they all of a sudden start to cave. They're like, yes, I'm sorry, Jared. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, yes, you're right. I will be better, right? You're like, okay, good. Don't let this happen again. And then you walk away. Well, that person goes home to their husband or their wife, and they say, man, Jared is he's such a jerk. Like, and the systems he gives me, and they start to be honest. The system he gives me or the clarity he gives me is just not there, right? That is information that I need as a leader to be able to fix. Because what if it is our broken systems or our broken clarity? By me overpowering them and being emotional, I'm not able to get the right answer. Now you might say, like, well, Jared, aren't you being a little bit of a passive owner? No, I'm playing chess, not checkers. What I mean by that is I'm still watching if they're the right person. If I give them the right system and I give them clarity, and they're just not doing the work after I was patient and I explained it to them, I regulated their nervous system, and they still can't perform, the conversation's pretty clear. Hey, unfortunately, you're not the right fit in this company. We're going to move on and find somebody else, right? And then you find somebody else. And guess what? You have a whole entire onboarding process to find really good people. And that's the thing that people don't understand is there's A players out there that want to work for a company and want to work for leaders that make them better than they would be by themselves. And so if you're not able to make your people better, you won't attract better people. You'll just attract people that want to be told what to do. A players don't want to be told what to do. They want to be assisted. They want to be helped. They want to have themselves go from 80% of their capability to 100%. That is your job. And so if you're wondering, like, why am I only getting these C players? Well, that's the reason why, because your leadership style is only appealing to C players. To appeal to A players, you got to act like if you were the employee, what company would you want to work for? And the first thing that you might say is, I would never work for anybody. What does that mean? Because you're used to seeing leaders that don't actually encourage you and make you better. But if you found a leader that you didn't feel like you were actually working for anybody, but you felt like there was somebody that was there to encourage you or to make you better, you probably would work for that person, wouldn't you? That's a part of leadership you have to learn. So the reframing of it is, instead of asking, why are you messing up? Ask, how can I serve you better? Again, why are you messing up? Defensive. All of a sudden, they're on the defensive. They're not going to give you the real answer, right? Hey, how can I serve you better? Like, again, I know you have this capability. I know you're better than this. Is there anything I can do to help you? Like, is there something broken? Because it's not like you, right? It's more of a loving and, hey, I'm on your team versus, hey, we're in separate teams. If you don't meet my standard, then you're not on my team. That's what most people do when they're emotional, right? Why this matters is when your team trusts you, they tell you the real problems. I just broke that down in detail. That is the most important thing that people don't understand. They're like, well, I feel a certain way. They got to know what I feel. That's an emotional business owner. The goal for business is you want to know the real problems. Now, a little bonus to that, let's say that I walk into a meeting, and let's say that I know the answers to all the questions they're about to ask. Should I answer them right away? Well, no, that would be an egotistical leader. What is my job as a CEO? My job is to make sure that I have the team that performs for my company, because my job is not to do the work. My job is to create the systems and the people that do the work for the company. And so if I go into a meeting and I know the answers already, I'm not going to go and say, hey guys, I already know the answers. Let me tell you everything. We're going to do X, Y, and Z, right? What I would do is I would actually check my team and see what they think. Again, chess, not checkers. Hey guys, we have this problem. I really don't know how to solve it, and I want to get you guys feedback on it. Let's go around the table and let's figure out what you guys would do and what you're going to recommend for this actual thing that we're struggling with, right? Sometimes the answer that comes out of your employee's mouth is actually better than what you thought about. And what does that do? That means that you have an A player who's better than what you can do. That is the best case scenario. Now, the worst case scenario is they go around the room and they give horrible ideas from what you're saying. Now, you shouldn't say, guys, that's a horrible idea. I think we should do it this way. A real leader will say, like, hey guys, like I appreciate all the feedback. What do you guys think about this idea? And then you stress test it. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's actually a really good idea. Awesome. Okay, let's implement that. I think that's the way to go, right? Yes. What you're doing is you're getting them to believe it's their idea, which therefore that they will own the actual idea. They will execute on it better. So again, do you see how I'm thinking? I'm zooming out of the business. I'm thinking about, like, look, if I want to be an egotistical business owner and I want to be valuable, right, I'm going to want to make sure everybody knows that I'm the most talented person. That is a player mindset. You have a decision to be the player in the game, which a lot of owners like to do this. They like to hit the game-winning shot. They like to have the ball be thrown to them to get the game-winning touchdown, right? Why? Because they want everybody celebrating them and look at me and, I want your autograph and all that. Real business owners are the owners in the box. They're the coaches that when they get the trophy, they're not the one talking about how awesome this was. What do? The first thing they do is they hand the trophy off to the players, and they thank the fans, everybody else besides themselves. They don't sit there like Conor McGregor saying, I'd like to take this chance to thank absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the F he wants, right? That's a player mindset. You're not going to be able to grow a real culture with that. It's the reason why Conor McGregor is an individual sport, and the culture that he built was for himself. But when you look at a culture like Greg Popovich and the Spurs, he has built multiple championship teams with different players over the years that have won, that weren't the most talented, but they won year after year, and they were always in the playoffs. Why? Because he was focused on the culture. Did Greg ever talk about how powerful he was and how a great coach he was? No, he's always serving his players. If you guys haven't seen Greg Popovich, there's a part in the book that's called The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. It breaks down the behind the scenes of how he leads people. Next level. Because you guys only probably see things on the surface level of what he does. When you start to break down what he's actually doing, he's playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers. That's what I love the most about him. Now, maybe what's happening is they're confused, they're overwhelmed, they're undertrained, they're unclear, they're unsupported, or maybe it's efforts. And those are two completely different problems. Notice the first things I said, which is they're confused, clarity. They're overwhelmed, systems. Undertrained, systems and clarity. Unclear, clarity. Unsupported, systems and clarity or leadership, right? If it's an effort issue and all these things you've already established with them, then you know what you need to do next. And again, it doesn't have to be emotional. That's also keeping your peace. So the last thing I'll say on this is I know I talked about a lot of business, but this does not just apply to business. This applies to your personal life as well. So my wife and I have this in the front of our house, which this is the code of honor that we have for the Carver Code of Honor. And so I'll make a separate video about how we do this from the family standpoint, but you notice how it's the same principles. We don't just give the actual code of honor, we give what it actually means. So for us, it's keep our priorities straight. Well, that's great. What's our priorities though? Because my priorities might be different than her priorities. Well, let's sit down and let's think about it. God first, family second, everything else third. Now, I was not always perfect with that, because I do Ironmans. I train a lot. And we got to a point just actually last week where I talked to my wife and she was like, hey, you're not really spending much time with God. I don't see you reading the Bible much right now. And you're kind of working a lot and you're training a lot. And it's like, interesting. I'm doing everything else first and I'm putting God and family second and third. And so it was a way for me to actually regroup and understand, like, you know what, I committed to this. Yeah. I look at this every single day before I walk in the house. Gosh, you're right. Okay. Now, if we didn't have this clear on the board, if we didn't both agree on this before, I'd probably make excuses. Well, you don't get it. Like, we got to make more money in the business, and I got to train and all this different stuff, right? And so this is the reason why these things are so important, not just to create, but to repeat and to go to when things are going wrong for you to actually do it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, leave a comment, subscribe, share this with anybody that you think is valuable. If you guys want to be coached by me and go through this in more depth, like my clients that I coach, to be able to create a powerful culture, not just to be able to run a winning culture, but also just get your peace back and learn how to be a better leader, find me on Instagram at Jared Carver, send me a DM, we'll jump on a call and we'll go from there. Love you guys.